I'm Brittany, this is Lan Jan, and welcome to Gaywatch, where we watch gay things. Today, we continue reading Volume 1 of Husky and His White Cat Shizun. We are on page, we are on page 1, we are on page 164. We're on page 365, for chapter 35, which is called This Venerable One Slips. I'm assuming we're going to see the fallout from when he actually slipped at the end of the previous chapter. Somebody kind of forgot that they had been reset and certain things happened with him and, Chu Wanning that I don't think Chu Wanning was prepared for at this point in time. So we're going to read for a couple of hours. There'll be a break somewhere around in the middle. Update on Pretty Boy and that whole situation. If you saw the previous stream, you know that I was raising money for the wife and I. Our cat Pretty Boy was suspected to have some heart problems and he needed to see a cardiologist, and it was a whole emergency and it was a whole big thing. The great news is that we surpassed our goal very quickly, in a rather staggering. I made a whole rambly, like 14-minute long thank you video on the Patreon for it, and yesterday was a time, because in like 25 minutes we covered the distance from the money that was raised during the stream on Tuesday, and all the way through to the goal and beyond the goal, significantly beyond the goal, in like 25 minutes. So we're just playing catch up this week. The wife and I are just trying to stay above water with all of the ups and downs. Pretty Boy is currently at the cardiologist, actually, and if the wife needs to call me for whatever reason, I'll just be dipping out of the stream really quickly so that I can take the call. But so far, it's just text updates, in that the cardiologist doesn't really think that Pretty Boy has a heart problem, but they're making sure that they can rule it out before we have to go to a neurologist. If you have ever had pet health issues, I understand, and I see you, and I love you very much. So other than potentially having to interrupt the stream, maybe if the wife has to call instead of text, other than that, we take a break about halfway through. We read for about 2 hours. We get through about 40, 50 pages. If I can, I'm going to try to squeak in a little bit more than that, so that we can have these last two streams for Volume 1 can be somewhat even, which we should be able to do. So I am hopeful, but we are here for the aftermath of Moran being Moran. I love that the go-to joke for English speakers can be the very easy word jump to moron. That makes me happy. Anyway, beginning. That night, Moran stared at the wall, cheek propped up on in his hand. On the other side of that wall was Chu Wanning and Shui Meng's room. Shimei was fastidious and had left a change of clothes folded neatly on the bed before going downstairs to ask the attendant to bring up hot water for a bath. The walls of the inn weren't especially soundproof. In the quiet, Moran could faintly hear the sounds coming from the adjacent room. Chu Wanning seemed to have said something. Moran couldn't hear him clearly, but he heard Shui Meng's voice, loud and clear. Seems a little tight. Moran's ears perked up like a dog's, twitching a little. On the other side of the wall, the little phoenix asked, "Shizun, does it hurt?" "It's fine. You can keep going." "I'll be gentle. Let me know if it does start to hurt." "You talk too much. Do it or don't." Moran's eyes widened in alarm. Sir, this might be the first time you're actually trying my patience. Surely there was no way, no how, not between those two. But what kind of exchange was that? What were they doing? Any number of things involving muscles or like harmless massages of, oh, damn, I have a cramp in, like, whatever the hell. But he is the king of jumping to conclusions. The pup's ears were practically pressed against the the pup's ears were practically pressed against the wall. There was there was me trying to skip a page. There was the faint sound of clothes rustling, and if he strained, he could even hear Chu Wanning's stifled groans. He had heard Chu Wanning make this kind of sound in bed countless times. That Shizun of his didn't like to make any noise at all, no matter whether it felt really good or really painful. He always bit down hard on his lower lip as unshed tears gathered in his eyes. At such times, all Moran had to do was push just a bit harder to rip soft, panting breaths from his throat. Wait, Chu Wanning's voice was low and rough. Don't touch me there. All right, Shimei hesitated, then said in a small voice, then Shizun will do it himself? Touch where? What nonsense was this? Don't touch him where? Do what himself? Just what are they doing? Again, any number of reasonable things. Moran's face darkened. By the time he realized what he was doing, he was knocking on the door to the neighboring room. Is anybody surprised? A flurry of hurried noises came from inside. The pup's expression grew even darker. Shizun, he called. What are you? The door opened with a creak. Shimei stood there, fully dressed, hand still holding a piece of blood-stained gauze. He narrowed his eyes as he glared at Moran in confusion. What do you want, making such a ruckus so late at night? Did you trip over a ghost or something? No, he just tripped over his repressed sexual feelings that are becoming more and more difficult to repress in a way that he's not very consciously aware of. Moran's mouth opened, then closed stupidly. He glanced past Shui Meng to where Chu Wanning sat by the table, upon which lay medicinal salve and fresh bandages. What were you guys? Shui Meng continued glaring. Applying medicine, of course. Shizun's shoulder hasn't healed yet. The dressing hadn't been changed for a few days, and some of the wounds got infected again. Then what was too tight? Moran asked dumbly. Too tight? Shui Meng thought for a while, eyebrows drawn together. Oh, the bandages. They were wrapped too tightly before. Blood stuck some bits to the wounds, and they almost wouldn't come off. Suddenly, he stopped talking and eyed Moran with suspicion. Were you eavesdropping? Moran rolled his eyes and scrambled to save his sorry face. Who's eavesdropping? The walls are so thin, you can hear someone breathing even if you only lean against them. Even if you only lean against him, not him telling on himself. You know, if you press your ear to the wall and you're really quiet, you can hear just about anything. Go see for yourself if you don't believe me. Oh, really? Shui Meng nodded, but then belatedly felt like something was off. Wait, how do you know that? Were you leaning against the wall to listen? Moran couldn't immediately respond. Mo Wei-yu, you're such a freak, Shui Meng said angrily. Who knows what beastly things you might have been doing to Shizun, Moran replied, just as angrily. Shui Meng was a pure person who knew nothing of such matters. He had no idea what Moran was implying, so he only got angrier. What nonsense are you yapping about? He turned to complain. Shizun, Chu Wanning put on his outer robe, holding it closed with one hand while straightening his hair with the other. He calmly walked over and looked Moran up and down. Did you need something? I heard... Moran fumbled for the words. That is, I thought Shui Meng was bullying you. What? Chu Wanning didn't understand at all. His eyes narrowed. Who's bullying me? Moran wanted to slap himself. They were in the middle of staring awkwardly at one another when Shimei came upstairs. Aran, what are you doing outside Shizun's room? Moran stammered. There was a misunderstanding. Shimei smiled. Well, has it been resolved? Yeah, Moran said hurriedly. Shimei, didn't you go ask the attendant for hot water? Shizun probably hasn't bathed yet either. I'll go ask them to bring extra. No need. Shimei produced 4 bamboo tablets, still smiling. The attendant said there's a natural hot spring by the inn, which the innkeeper converted into a bath. These tablets are passes. I got one for everyone. Moran felt that he, being a cut sleeve... Oh, we have to take a drink for the first instance of cut sleeve. Which comes with a footnote. Gay originates from a folk tale about an emperor who cut his sleeve off because he didn't want to wake his male lover, who was sleeping on it. Being a cut sleeve, probably shouldn't go soak in the hot spring with the other 3. Shui Meng was whatever. Shimei was, in Moran's eyes, pure and divine, and he dared not even conceive of dirty thoughts about him. But Chu Wanning... From the handful of incidences of close contact they'd had since Moran's rebirth, he was well aware that if he saw that person in a state of undress, he would probably lose his mind. Moran covered his face with a hand. I'll pass. You don't bathe before bed? Gross, Shui Meng said, shocked. I'll ask the attendant to send up some hot water, said Moran. Shimei was baffled. They don't boil bath water here, since all the guests go to the hot spring. Left, with no other choice. Moran could only grab a change of clothes and go to the hot spring along with everyone else. The inn was pretty diligent when it came to currying favor. They knew that most people who stayed with them were cultivators headed to Jingcheng Lake in hopes of obtaining a weapon, so they had named the bath Daybreak's Reflection in Jincheng to invite luck. Moran was scared stiff of losing his senses, too afraid to so much as accidentally brush against the others. Instead, he changed in a rush, wrapped the towel tightly around his waist, and ran off by himself to the hot spring to find a secluded spot. It was already rather late, so there weren't many people in the bath. The ones who were there were scattered a distance away. With a square of white towel on top of his head, Moran sank into the water, leaving only half his face above it, and let out a long breath, listening to the glug-glug sound as he blew bubbles. The first person to finish changing strode out with long, bare legs. Moran snuck a glance and let out a breath of relief. Thank the gods, it was only Shui Meng. Shui Gongze might... Ooh, that actually came out half appropriately. Shui Gongze, closer, might have been handsome, but no matter how you cut it, he wasn't Taishanjun's type. Their gazes met, and Shui Meng pointed at him. You, stay away from me. What gives? You're filthy. Moran said only, har har. The bath was misty with water vapor. After a while, Shui Meng paused in the middle of scrubbing himself to call out, Shizun, over here. Moran, with his face half under water, nearly choked. He knew damn well that he shouldn't look, but his gaze couldn't help but wander. That single glance nearly killed him. Oh, if we get art. He was so startled that he swallowed 2 whole mouthfuls of bathwater and didn't even have time to be grossed out. Instead, he hurried to sink even deeper into the spring until only his eyes remained above it. He totally hadn't expected Chu Wanning and Shimei to come out together. That is brutal for this man. That is particularly unfair. Your emotional crush and your sexual crush at the same, that's cruel. Shimei was slender and beautiful in a soft way, with long ink-black hair draped over his shoulders and wrapped in a towel. By all rights, Moran should have wanted to sneak a look at him more than anything, but his glance darted quickly past him. He sincerely respected Shimei like the bright moon above and dared not stare at him in public. Chu Wanning, on the other hand, was tall and coldly handsome, with broad shoulders and a narrow waist, a toned body and supple skin. He had his hair up in a high ponytail and wore a large white bathrobe that covered his whole body, except for the front, where the robe couldn't quite be pulled close and revealed an expanse of smooth, firm chest. As Moran stared at him, he felt like he was going to suffocate and boil in the water. He wanted to look away, but his traitorous eyes refused to listen and fixed themselves on Chu Wanning without moving even the slightest bit. His ears slowly turned red. Through the heavy steam, Chu Wanning seemed to have glanced at him, or perhaps not. He cast a waterproofing barrier over his bandages and stepped into the water. His legs were visible amidst the floating robe, long and slender, balanced with tight contours. We really couldn't get art of this? Moran really couldn't take any more. He closed his eyes to sink all the way into the water. Even though he was covered by a towel wrapped around his waist, his reaction was all too clear. Moran felt extremely wronged. He honestly didn't like Chu Wanning. He, in fact, hated Chu Wanning. Have I mentioned yet how this reminds me of the way Shin Cho in Villain Self-Saving System, would constantly shit on the story that he was in? And it was like, dude, you are protesting way too much. And in the end, I was right. This is a more obvious example, but it's just so funny that I happened to read that book immediately before this. Moran felt extremely wronged. He honestly didn't like Chu Wanning. He, in fact, hated Chu Wanning. But his body remembered their fervent love-making. I still have questions about this, those frenzied entanglements that had turned even bones of steel tender. All of the absurd things they had shared made his face redden and his heart race. See? Is he remembering some, I already alluded to this. There was more than one. There could have been more than one. He's either reacting to a certain type of thing, or he is painting the thing as more romantic than it was, is kind of what I'm alluding to. I genuinely don't know. And I think kind of the point is that you don't know, so I'm very deliberately not looking at chat right now. That's an interesting question to be hovering over everything as it happens. The jut of Moran's throat bobbed as a celestial war raged within him. He felt like he was about to cry. For the first time in his life, he loathed himself. Why was he like this? Shimei was right there. What the fuck was he doing, losing his damn mind over Chu Wanning? And that's what the other 10 volumes of this are about. Even if they had once pressed themselves together, skin to skin, as they intertwined in their previous life, all of that was in the past. Even if he was hung up on Chu Wanning's body, how could he do this to Shimei? This was utterly disrespectful to him. He deserved better. Moran lowered his head and focused on dispelling these wicked thoughts for quite a while before finally managing to suppress the fire in his abdomen. He burst out of the water and shook off the droplets, wiped his face with a towel, and opened his watery eyes. I do get the whole, even if it's in two different ways, I do get the whole, you have feelings for two different people and it's genuinely confusing. Because it's genuinely confusing. And even if you're not officially with either of the people, you kind of feel a bit shitty. So, like, that is honestly relatable. Hello. Did I just talk myself out the... Okay. And came face to face with Chu Wanning. Even worse, the water he had just shaken off splashed right onto Chu Wanning's face. He watched as a droplet leisurely made its way down into Chu Wanning's sharp black eyebrow and then slowly slid lower, nearly slipping into that beautiful phoenix eye. An awkward silence bloomed between them. This was the actual worst. Moran hadn't been able to see his surroundings when he was submerged underwater and holding his breath. Chu Wanning also hadn't realized Moran was under the water at that location. He had just been minding his own business, moving to fetch the box of fragrance bars. He didn't even reach the box before he was splashed with a face full of water. The hot spring was quite deep, the water exceptionally buoyant. Moran, head swimming, tried to back away, but instead he ended up slipping and falling right into Chu Wanning's arms instead. We all know that part of the drama. Oh God, that's the end of the chapter. Oh Jesus. That would be page 373 for chapter 36, called This Venerable One Has Probably Lost His Mind. It takes 36 chapters, but he is finally starting to clue in to at least that part. Whew. Also, this is a scene that didn't make it into the live action. Without thinking, Chu Wanning reached out to steady Moran. As the two of them stood plastered against each other in the warm spring water, Moran felt a spark run through his entire body as goosebumps crawled up his skin. Even though he'd already held a near-naked Chu Wanning in the Red Lotus Pavilion, the circumstances at the time had been dire. There had been no time to dwell on the situation, so he hadn't thought much of it. Now, with one hand against Chu Wanning's chest and the other unconsciously supporting his Shizun's waist, their legs tangled together under the water, and with the spring making their skin feel warmer and more slippery, Moran's head all but exploded. Which head remains to be seen. Upon making contact with Chu Wanning, even though he'd done nothing but touch his waist, his body reacted with the intensity of a rushing river. What'd I just say? Shizuna... Moran frantically tried to get up and away, and in the struggle, his red-hot lower parts made contact with the other man. No! No! Moran, no. In this moment, I feel so bad for him. Oh, God. That's genuinely embarrassing. Oh. Chu Wanning's eyes widened, his beautiful face stricken with horror, and he rapidly backed away. Yeah, as far as Chu Wanning is concerned, this kid's 16. Still. At the same time, the droplet of water that had been clinging to his eyelashes slid into his eye. He grew more and more agitated, squeezing his eyes shut and rubbing at them, but he didn't have a bath towel with which to wipe away the water. Shizun, use mine. Moran's face burned red, mortified to absolute death. Still trying his best to pretend that nothing was wrong, he used his own towel to wipe the water droplets off of Chu Wanning's face. When Chu Wanning finally opened his phoenix eyes again, he still had a baffled look of distress, under which lay a hint of panic. It only lasted a moment before he quickly forced himself to calm down. He pretended he hadn't felt anything at all. The fragrance bar, he said tightly. Pass it to me. Oh, okay. Moran crab-walked stiffly to the edge of the pool and picked up the box of fragrance bars sitting on the edge. What scent does Shizun want? Whichever. Moran's head swam in a daze. After staring blankly into the box for a long time, he turned back and said with complete sincerity, "There's no scent here called whichever." Chu Wanning sighed heavily. Plum blossom and high tongue. Okay. Moran took 2 fragrance bars and handed them to Chu Wanning. As soon as their fingertips touched, Moran experienced another burst of tremors. No matter how badly he wanted to shake off all those memories from the past, it was impossible. Also, you know what I forgot to do before the stream today? I forgot to feed the one cat who's still here at the moment. I will be right back so I can feed the poor boy, and then maybe he won't be, hollering at me. One moment, please. Alrighty. The cat has been fed as he was supposed to be immediately before the stream. We're at the bottom of page 375. If this had been that past, he would already be fervently entwined with Chu Wanning beside the spring. A vision appeared unbidden before his eyes of Chu Wanning half kneeling, sprawled on the ground beneath Moran's fiery, ferocious passion. His Shizun's eyes were half-lidded and his body trembled uncontrollably as he endured, but was still fucked into his own climax. Moran was unable to stand it anymore. These carnal desires made his eyes go bloodshot. He didn't dare look at Chu Wanning at all. Even looking at Shimei was safer than looking at him. How could this be? How could this happen? Moran quickly finished washing himself and, taking advantage of the fact that the other three were still soaking, said something vague to the effect of, "I'm sleepy and will turn in first." Once Moran got back to his room, he bolted and locked the door. He couldn't take it anymore. He moved to relieve himself of his urges. Of course. Why did I not see this coming? Oh, hello. Sorry, I tried to backtrack a couple of steps. You'd think I would remember that stopping point. He didn't want to think about Chu Wanning's appearance at a time like this. He even preferred the idea of soiling Shimei's pure image. At least that would be easier for his confused heart to accept. But neither his body nor his mind would listen, and every sight that flashed before his eyes was that of the past him and Chu Wanning, bound together in passion. It was like this night had unlocked the floodgates, and every single torrid memory rushed back into his mind in a frenzy, racking him with devastating shudders. Moran treated himself almost roughly, as though he was on top of the other man's body and on the very edge of ruin. He threw his head back, refusing to accept it, yet his breaths came out in muddled gasps and pants. He breathed out a name without realizing it. Wanning. As he called this name, he let out a stifled grunt, shivering slightly as he came, without holding anything back, covering his palm in sticky wetness. Once he'd finished, Moran leaned over to rest his forehead against the cold wall. His eyes were awash with confusion. Shame, guilt, loathing, arousal. He had never expected he would have such strong reactions to Chu Wanning, even after being reborn. No romantic shame as a gay man, but deep sexual shame. Moran was instantly filled with disgust toward himself. In his past life, he had never attained Shimei and had vented all his passion into countless other frivolous relationships. Though he had made those relationships seem like passionate love, none of them had really meant anything to him. With the candlelight extinguished, it was all just sex, all the same, no matter who it was with. Even the way his heart had moved toward Rongju had been because of the man's passing resemblance to Shimei. That's interesting. Hang on. Yeah, because then it's like the shameful sex doesn't mean anything if it's, if you tell yourself that it's meaningless by just having it with all these different people. Now I see where he's coming from. But when it's so intensely focused on just one person, that feels different. Okay. But the kinds of feelings he'd had toward Chu Wanning had been completely different. He was acutely aware of how much more intense everything had been with Chu Wanning. Just thinking about him like that had brought Moran a pleasure more profound than anything he ever felt with a prostitute. It hadn't been just physical. It had been... Moran didn't want to continue that line of thought. Damn it! I suppose it was way too early to get my hopes up about that one. Yeah. Profound love is okay. Sex, shameful, but still okay. Love and sex in the same person? No. He was in love with Shimei, always had been and always would be. His feelings absolutely wouldn't change. After repeating this to himself a few times, Moran calmly slowed his breathing, frowned, and squeezed his eyes shut. It's also deeply relatable in the sense that Shimei essentially being his one and only true love, any feelings that betray that are really complicated. Because that's not supposed to be how it works. It's supposed to be this person till the end of time, no matter what, and that's it. And when that gets challenged, it can be highly disorienting. I'm speaking from experience on this one. After repeating this to himself a few times, Moran calmly slowed his breathing, frowned, and squeezed his eyes shut. He felt anxious, annoyed, and aggrieved all at once. He didn't want this. When it came to lust, he couldn't help but think of Chu Wanning. When the lust subsided, he didn't want anything to do with Chu Wanning. Didn't want to imagine so much as a hair on his head, not even a fleeting look. Sure. Frantically, he thought to himself, almost to the point of paranoia, that the one he liked, the one he loved deeply, was Shimei. That was a scene break. Chu Wanning's mind was in a similar state of distress. Totally unexpectedly, he had seen and, moreover, felt Moran's desire. This poor man. The young man's body was quite mature in that regard and was already profoundly overwhelming, so hard and so hot as to be scalding once excited, like hot iron waiting to be forged. Even though Chu Wanning had quickly molded his face into a blank slate of serenity and refused to bring anything up afterward, the encounter had made his head go numb and filled him with disbelief. To make matters worse, his own body had reacted as well. Fortunately, his thin face meant he always wore a bathrobe even in hot springs. It covered his whole body, and so no one had seen a thing. Otherwise, he really wouldn't have been able to show his face again. But why would Moran... As he lay in bed that night, Chu Wanning ruminated quietly for hours. He dared not even imagine that maybe Moran also liked him. That sort of thought was entirely too delusional and shameful. Even the cautious thought of maybe Moran also likes... Chu Wanning furiously pinched himself before he could even finish the thought, before the word me could surface in his mind. That pair of clear, bright phoenix eyes flickered as if trying to hide. He didn't dare entertain the whole thought. Also, we should really start a drinking game about phoenix eyes. Non-alcoholic, because if it was alcoholic, we'd be dead. But I think that's going to be a thing. Besides, his personality was harsh. He was quick to hit people. His words were venomous. He had a bad temper, and he was nowhere near as attractive as Shimei. Yeah. And on top of all that, he was no longer young. Even if Moran liked men, he wouldn't be blind enough to like Chu Wanning. Honey! I mean, complicated and shameful feelings for 16-year-olds aside. Honey. To all appearances, Chu Wanning was aloof and haughty, but within, in truth, he'd been treated coldly by others for so long, been feared for so long, that as he walked this long and lonely road, his opinion of himself had slowly crumbled to dust. Ow. Also relatable. After they woke the next day, Moran and Chu Wanning met in the hallway of the inn, both harboring secrets in their hearts. They looked at each other, but neither deigned to speak first. Ultimately, it was Moran who carried on as if all was normal. He smiled at Chu Wanning. Shizun. Chu Wanning was relieved, as he really hadn't known how else to deal with this situation, but as Moran had chosen not to mention anything that had happened the night before, he was perfectly content to go along with it. These guys are going to not talk each other to death. Literally. He nodded once, lightly. Since you're going up, wake Shimei. Since you're up, go wake Shimei as well. Let's pack and depart for Dawning Peak. Dawning Peak was covered in snow all year round and exceedingly cold. Even for a cultivator, it was difficult to withstand such frigid weather. Chu Wanning went to a tailor to buy winter cloaks and gloves for his disciples to wear when it got particularly freezing. The shopkeeper, smoking from her pipe with her scarlet lips as she smiled and welcomed customers, took one look at Moran and said, "What a handsome little Shanjun! Look at this black cape with a golden dragon on it. The embroidery is of the highest quality. The eyes alone took me more than 3 months to complete." Moran gave her an embarrassed laugh. "Jijia's words are very sweet, but I'm just going into the mountains to seek a weapon. There's no need for me to wear something so ornate and formal." When the prospect failed, the shopkeeper instead took hold of Shimei. "Oh, this young Shanjun is lovely beyond compare, even more so than the most gorgeous girl in this city. Shanjun, I think this red butterfly and peony cloak would suit you perfectly. How about you give it a try?" Shimei forced a smile. "Ma'am, isn't this a woman's cloak?" Shui Meng hated shopping for clothes, so he'd refused to come along and was waiting outside. Chu Wanning chose a black cloak with purple trim for him, with white rabbit fur that lined the hood. "Shanjun, this cloak is a bit small for you," said the shopkeeper. "It would be better suited for a teenager." "It's for my disciple," Chu Wanning said tonelessly. Oh, the shopkeeper realized her mistake and quickly smiled. "What a wonderful teacher." It might have been the first time Chu Wanning had been called a wonderful teacher. He went still, and his face betrayed nothing, but his steps were out of sync when he walked away, right arm moving with right leg, and so on, for quite a few steps. Moran ended up choosing an ashen-colored cloak, Shimei a moonlight white one, and Chu Wanning a plain white one, as well as the black cloak with purple trim. After they made their purchases, they went back to Shui Meng. When Shui Meng saw his cloak, his eyes widened. "What is it?" Chu Wanning asked, not understanding his reaction. It's nothing." When Chu Wanning walked far enough away that Shui Meng thought he couldn't hear, he looked at the trim on the cloak and muttered, "Purple? I don't like purple." That comes with a footnote, and it says, in modern times, purple has been associated with homosexuality. This is a bit of a joke on the author's part. One, in Shui Meng being too straight to exist, and then conversely, Chu Wanning being too gay to exist. Even when he's shopping for others, he still shops gay. He didn't expect to hear Chu Wanning's voice say sharply, "Such nonsense. If you won't wear it, you can climb up naked." Shui Meng fell silent. They went at a leisurely pace for the last leg of their journey, and before nightfall, they reached the foot of Dawning Peak. The mountain was rich in spiritual power and home to many beasts and monsters. Even cultivators didn't dare rush up it carelessly unless they were significantly strong. However, since Chu Wanning was with them, they didn't have to worry about such things. Chu Wanning conjured 3 night-glow Haitong blossoms from thin air, gave them spirit-repelling properties, and tucked them into the belts of his 3 disciples. "Let's go," he said. Moran raised his head to look out at the peaks concealed under the veil of night, like a huge ancient beast crouching deathly still. Myriad emotions poured into his heart. In the past, it had been on Dawning Peak that he declared to the sun and moon, to ghosts and demons, that he, Moran, was no longer satisfied with being Taishanjun of the cultivation realm, and that he was going to declare himself emperor of the entire world. That same year, he had taken a wife and concubine at Dawning Peak. He still remembered the face of that wife, Song Chutong, a true unparalleled beauty. From certain angles, her features had strongly resembled Shimei's. Are we surprised? Moran wasn't a person who cared much for etiquette or honor, and he hadn't bothered with the tedium of marriage rites. Instead, he had taken Song Chutong's fine hand and pulled the red-veiled woman up a flight of thousands of stairs. Together they had walked for over an hour. Eventually, Song Chutong's feet had hurt too much to go on. Moran had a bad temper and had lifted her veil, intending to yell at her, but under the light of the moon, Song Chutung's delicate eyes and her wounded yet resilient gaze had made her look just like a certain person, one who had long since passed. Those scathing words had died on Moran's tongue, and, after drawing a shaky breath, the words that had finally emerged were, "Shimei, I'll carry you." In terms of seniority, if Song Chutung had been his peer, she would have indeed been his Shimei. So she had only paused slightly at this term of address, reasoning that since Moran had wiped out the entirety of Rufeng's sect, she was naturally now part of Xishang Peak. That being the case, it wasn't like it was incorrect for him to call her Shimei, and so she'd only smiled and said, "Okay." And so, for the last several thousand steps, Taishan-jun, master of the mortal realm and lord of the shadows, had steadily, one foot in front of the other, carried his red-adorned bride to the peak. There he lowered his head and watched the shape of their shadows twist strangely over the ground and overlap each other. He laughed a little, voice hoarse, as he said, "Shimei, I'm going to be the master of the mortal realm. From this day onward, no one will be able to hurt you." The woman on his back didn't know what to say to this. She hesitated a little and finally said, The voice was soft. Perhaps because it was so soft, its femininity was difficult to distinguish, and it sounded muffled and ambiguous. Not a soul could see Moran's face as his eyes grew red. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I've made you wait for this day for far too long." Song Chutung thought that Moran was saying he had feelings for her for a long time, so she replied gently, "My husband." This time the undeniably feminine voice came out clear and crisp, like morning dew, pleasing to the ear, but Moran's feet jerked to a halt. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." As he started to walk again, Moran's voice lost its hoarse quality and no longer trembled. After a pause, he said, "Just call me Aran from now on." Song Chutung was caught off guard and didn't quite dare to address Taishan-jun in this way. "My husband, I'm afraid—" "If you don't listen to me, I'll throw you off this mountain," Moran snarled, violent and severe. "Aran!" Song Chutung quickly amended her words. "Aran, I was wrong." Moran said nothing else. He lowered his head again, silently walking forward. The shadows on the ground were still only shadows. In hindsight, it was easy to see that was all they had ever been. Ouch! The things he had yearned for were nothing more than fantasies. What he had was nothing more than an illusion. In the end, it was all just wishful thinking. That's a scene break. "Shimei." The person walking beside Moran turned his head. Amidst the sound of shifting leaves and rustling grass, the light of the moon illuminated that person's lovely face. "Aran, what is it? Are you tired from walking?" Moran glanced at Chu Wanning and Shui Meng, who were walking in front of them, and whispered, "If you're tired, how about I carry you?" Before Shimei could reply, Chu Wanning turned his head to look back at them. He glared dourly at Moran. "Are Xi Mingjing's legs broken? Does he need you to carry him?" "Shizun," Shimei said hurriedly, "Aran was just joking. Don't be angry." Chu Wanning frowned, eyebrows drawing together into a severe expression. Sparks practically flew from his glower. Ridiculous. What could I possibly be angry about? Done speaking, he whirled back around with a flick of his sleeve. Moran and Shimei exchanged a look. "Shizun seems mad." "You know how he is," Moran whispered into Shimei's ear. "Super petty. He's all cold-blooded and heartless, and he won't even let other people be nice to each other." He wrinkled his nose and lowered his voice even further, concluding, "He's seriously the worst." Suddenly, Chu Wanning's voice rang out from in front of them. "Mo Wei Yu, one more word and I'll toss you down this mountain." Moran shut his mouth obediently, but he secretly grinned over at Shimei and mouthed, "See what I say?" Guys. You're more alike than you think, guys. That was the end of the chapter. We're on page 385 for chapter 37. This venerable one meets a god. Cold moonlight upon frosty snow, frozen mountain embracing icy lake. Here lie heights insurmountable. Here lies the edge of the world. Shimei, hands clad in deerskin gloves, wiped snow off of the large boulder and read the cinnabar inscription upon it out loud. He looked back gleefully. Shizun, we're here. It snowed on Dawning Peak all year round. At the moment, a majestic moon hung full in the sky, and it cast a crisp, shimmering glow over the icy lake as the frigid air blew bleak and chilly. Jincheng Lake was frozen over. No snow lay upon it, and its surface was pearlescent beneath the heavenly expanse of the starry skies. It spread across the horizon, the reflection of the stars glittering within it, as if they'd come down from the heavens above, breathtakingly beautiful. This pristine, snowy landscape really did leave them feeling like they had arrived at the very edge of the world. The group reached the edge of the lake. The surface was mirror smooth and shimmered with a sublime otherworldly light. A stone embankment stretched out over the lake toward its center, and next to it stood a frost-covered stone tablet. Intersecting patterns spread over the stone, and the words, "The path forward is difficult," were written upon it in stark, powerful calligraphy. After thousands of years, the words were still clear. It seemed like they were often repainted. Chu Wanning stopped in front of the stone embankment. Only one person at a time can go to the lake to seek a weapon. Which of you will go first? Shimei could hardly contain himself before blurting out, "Shizun, I'll go first." Chu Wanning looked at him, thought it over, and shook his head. "You're too rash. I don't think that's a good idea." At this, Shimei, who had been standing by the side, laughed a little. "Shizun, how about I go in first, since I probably won't be able to break through the ice anyway?" Shimei walked along the stone embankment, I just got excited, which was wide enough for only a single person at a time, and slowly made his way to the end. Following procedure, he produced a ball of spiritual energy in his hand and leaned forward to place his palm against the ice. His spiritual energy traveled ceaselessly down along the lake's surface, the glistening white light of his power flickering into the distance. Moran stood from afar and held his breath, hands unconsciously clenching into fists. But no matter how long Shimei tried, the ice didn't budge a mote. He forced a smile as he gave up and walked back. "Shizun, my apologies," he said to Chu Wanning. "No matter, try again after cultivating a few more years." Moran sighed a little, somehow more disappointed than either of them, but he still went to comfort Shimei. "It's fine. There will be more opportunities. I'll come with you the next time you try." "Enough with the chit-chat," said Chu Wanning. "Step up. It's your turn now." In Moran's previous lifetime, he had gone to seek his holy weapon during the most carefree days of his youth, and he'd had nothing but boundless enthusiasm at the prospect. But in this lifetime, it was nothing more than a pickup. He knew what awaited him, and he had none of that prior anxiety or eagerness. He did, however, have something of a warm feeling, the anticipation of a reunion with an old friend. Moran walked along the stone embankment and knelt before the icy lake. Bending down, he pressed his palm against the ice. He closed his eyes. His scabbardless long blade, that sinful, vicious blade, had been his constant companion, had seen all the sights of the world at his side, had tasted all the blood of the mortal realm as he had. Wouldn't it be absolutely goddamn wild if he couldn't do it? Moran opened his eyes and whispered to the surface of the lake. Bugui, I believe? I'm here." As if sensing the call of its destined master, an enormous black shadow swiftly appeared under the frozen sheet of Jincheng Lake. The shadows gathered under the ice, becoming more and more clear, more and more vivid. In a sudden cacophony, thousands of feet of ice shattered, and Moran heard Shui Meng's distant shout of alarm from the shore. "The ice is gone!" The lake water surged up, waves crashing. A massive turquoise black dragon breached, each scale on its body nearly 7 feet wide. In an instant, Jincheng Lakes became a churning mass of waves, and a heavy fog rolled over them. The dragon glinted brilliantly under the moonlight as breath spouted from its nostrils. At the same time, an ancient barrier fell over the edge of the lake, separating Moran from his peers in Chu Wanning. Within the barrier, a human and dragon regarded each other. Shit! Oh! Art. Moran squinted his eyes and raised his head, peering up through the misty spray at the dragon. The dragon held in its jaws a pitch-black blade with no scabbard. Though time-worn and plain, the blade was sharp, able to slice with ease through steel and gold alike. The dragon shrunk the blade to a size that a human could wield, and slowly lowered its radiant, vibrant, serpentine body to the ground to place the blade in front of Moran. However, it didn't lift its head right away. Instead, it turned its golden eyes, each as large as twice the height of a fully grown man, to stare at Moran. The dragon's eyes were like two great bronze mirrors, and Moran's reflection shone clearly within them. Moran stood still with bated breath, waiting for it to speak. If nothing had changed, he would only be asked to retrieve a plum blossom from the foot of the mountain and bring it back. Ultimately, because the old dragon sought only peace and elegance, he'd been let off easy. Who could have predicted that, after waiting for so long, this dragon wouldn't do as it had in their previous lifetime, and so easily yield Moran's weapon? The dragon's beard fluttered as it narrowed its enormous golden eyes, then it lifted its front claw to write 2 words in the snow before Moran. Mortal one, with a question mark. Moran was taken aback. He clearly remembered that in his previous lifetime the dragon had been able to speak. Why, in this life, was it mute? After writing those 2 words, the mute dragon promptly wiped the writing away with its scaly claw to write another sentence. No, a mortal would not have such strong spiritual energy. Then you are a divine being? Moran was speechless. What? He died a human, right? Right? Hang on. Look at this art while I contemplate. Look at this absolutely fucking banger art. By the way, that's so cool looking. But also, what? What do you mean? He was an emperor. I don't recall any mentions of anything else until now. So hang on. Let me turn the page. The old dragon thought for a moment, then swiped its claw once more and wrote, "Not a divine being. There is an evil energy in you. Then are you a kind of demon?" What kind of nonsense is this? Moran yelled in his head. This venerable one was just reborn. What's there to think about? Just hand over this venerable one's blade already. The old dragon seemed to sense his impatience and suddenly lifted its scaly claws to trap the blade beneath its foot. With one foot on the blade, it used the other to wipe away its writing and continue on another patch of snow. No need to take offense. I perceive 2 other shadows. What? 2 other shadows in your body. I have never seen anything like this in my life. So tell me, are you a human or a ghost? Divine or demonic? What is happening? Moran raised an eyebrow. I'm human, of course. Is that something that even needs to be said? Well, a human who's died once before, he thought. The old dragon paused for a moment, then wrote, "One human soul, split like so. Such a thing has truly never been seen before. It's unheard of." The old, sorry, I've lost the ability to anything. As Moran watched the dragon sway sluggishly back and forth in a puzzled and almost slow-witted manner, he couldn't help but find it funny. What's so strange about it? Anyway, Chenpei, what'll it take for you to give me this blade of yours? The old dragon sized him up for a while and wrote, "Stand there and don't move. Let me use a technique to peer into your soul, and then I'll give the blade to you. How about that? I don't know, man. What are you about to find in his soul? Two shadows? Besides him? Two other shadows. There are two other shadows. So there's him, and there's two other dudes. In one... Is it Shimei and Chu Wanning? That would be wow, you know, I don't know. It's almost like I'm only on volume 1. Moran hadn't expected to receive such a request. Under that profound stare, he started to feel a little hesitant. He wondered whether this old thing could really see into his past life. What would happen if it could? Judging from what I know about your past life, nothing all that great. But Bugui was right in front of him. This blade was powerful and unusually strong for a holy weapon. If he refused it now, he would never have a second chance to get his hands on it. After hesitating for a moment, Moran looked up. That's fine and all, but Chenbei, will you give me the blade no matter what you see inside of me? The old dragon drew on the ground. These are the terms. I will naturally follow through on my words. No matter whether I was good or evil in the past? The old dragon paused for a moment and then wrote, Even if you were evil in the past, I will not stop you. I can only hope that you will pursue goodness in the future. Moran clapped his hands together and smiled. All right, if Chenbei says so, I don't have any objections. Please examine me all you like, Chenbei. Is it gonna be like a, yeah, sure, if you're like not the best person, you know, who am I to like frickin' judge? I can only help that you make better choices in the future. What if like that's the vibe? And then he looks into Moran's past life and is like, actually, you know, maybe never mind. Maybe you gotta fight me for it. I literally have no idea. The old dragon lifted itself slightly. Its luminous serpentine body bowed. It blew a breath from its nostrils, and its eyes emitted a bright red glow. Moran raised his head and realized that the red glow was, in fact, a hazy mist. As the blood-red mist thickened, it gradually concealed his reflection in the dragon's eyes. After a few moments, the fog slowly dissipated, revealing Moran's image once more. But this time, Moran was astounded to find that his reflection in the dragon's eyes was not alone. Faintly visible behind him were two additional, hazy, indistinct shadows, one to his left and one to his right. Moran whipped around in shock, but behind him there was only emptiness and the unceasingly falling snow. Where had the other figures come from? As he turned back again, he saw the figures in the dragon's eyes become clearer and clearer, like something submerged in water, slowly rising to the surface. Moran kept staring and to his surprise realized that the two silhouettes were extremely familiar. Though their eyes were closed, he couldn't stop himself from taking a step forward. All at once, the two figures opened those eyes. Shimei. Chu Wanning. He never would have expected them. Really? Because I feel like that was a fairly easy guess. Like, I'm still kind of thrilled that I was right, but that wasn't the most difficult thing to predict in the world. You know what I mean? Stunned, Moran stumbled and staggered backward, stuttering so hard that he couldn't form whole sentences. How is this? The three people in the old dragon's eyes stood quietly, expressions placid and devoid of emotion. They only stared into the distance. Moran was stupefied. After a moment, the blood-red fog rose again, and the figures in the dragon's eyes blurred until they finally disappeared altogether. The old dragon blew a huff from its nose and shook out its body. Then it wrote quickly, I cannot make sense of it. I have seen much in my lifetime, but I have never seen a person's soul with the imprints of two others upon it. Certainly it is utterly perplexing. My soul has their imprints on it? Yes. After writing that one word, the old dragon paused for a moment before continuing. I do not know what you could have possibly endured. How deep must an obsession run for another person to be enmeshed so inextricably in one's own soul. This dragon reading him to filth. As Moran stared at the messy lines in the snow, his face began to go red as if he'd choked on something. His obsession with Shimei ran so far down in his bones that learning that Shimei was imprinted upon his soul and that this dragon could also see him when he looked at Moran didn't faze him much at all. But what the hell was up with Chu Wanning also being there? What kind of heartfelt obsession did he have toward Chu Wanning? Did extreme hatred count as an obsession intense enough to entangle one's soul? This human and dragon were so immersed in contemplation that neither noticed as the surface of Jincheng Lake started to ripple unnaturally. When the water rushed up and the waves broke through, it was too late. Jincheng Lake cleaved apart as if sliced in half by a sword. The water on both sides rushed up toward the sky until they towered so high they blocked out all other sights. Two tightly ordered herds of beasts rushed out from between the waves. They had the bodies of leopards and the heads of oxen, and though they weren't as large as the old dragon, the horns on their heads shone with cold light, and every last claw was sharp and menacing. Although hundreds of them gathered, the old dragon displayed no fear. It only gazed at them with his golden eyes. What's happening? Moran asked. It's the question of the day. The old dragon paused, then wrote, The exalted Gochen. The exalted Gochen. The exalted Go... The instant Moran read those three words, he felt as if he'd been struck by lightning. Gochen the Exalted was the god of weaponry, lord of all the weapons in the world. This founding god had created the first sword in existence to aid Fuxi in laying waste to his demonic enemies. That awe-inspiring primal god was actually hundreds of cows? There's a line you don't read every day. The thought was too horrifying for Moran to accept. It's almost like our preconceived notions don't really mean anything most of the time. As he stared blankly, uncomprehending, he heard the sound of a shun coming from far away. The shun was an ancient instrument. Not many people of the present age knew how to play it. As the sound came closer, the raucous herd of beasts slowly stilled and bent their forelegs one by one until they knelt in two rows. A man, clad in splendid robes and carrying a long sword, rode atop a Chilin? Through the path made by the beasts. This man had a handsome face, with fine features and a pleasant disposition. He stood in the wind, his robes billowing as the snow fell on him, the clay shun in his hands glossy and dark. His fingers lay lightly over the holes as he held it to his lips to play. When the music finished on a soft note, the hundreds of oxen-like beasts suddenly dissolved into water, revealing that they had only been conjurations. Another assumption. That wasn't a preconceived moment. That was an assumption moment. You see cows and you immediately assume that this big and powerful god is cows? Like, no, give it 2 seconds. The man put down the clay shun, ran his eyes over Moran for a moment, and gently smiled. What a truly strange person, the likes of which one might never encounter in millennia. No wonder you piqued Wang Yue's interest. I am Guchen the Exalted, who lives within Jincheng Lake. All the weapons in this lake were forged by my own hands. They are but objects of little consequence. Please excuse my humble work. Have I said that this is a really fucking good concept for, like, a forge god? Like, that's really cool. He's at the bottom of a lake and he's just making all of this great shit, and then, like, a person has to come along and, like, melt that. Like, that's really cool. Like, that's just fun. That's just so cool. Even though the old dragon had written the name and this man was saying it himself as well, Moran couldn't believe it. His face paled. You're Gochen the Exalted. The man smiled patiently. Yes, I am he. Moran was on the verge of choking. God of 1,000 weapons? That guy? Correct. Gochen the Exalted raised his brows delicately, laughter in his eyes. The later generations do seem to call me that. How embarrassing. I only grind out a few paltry swords and tie a few little whips when I'm bored, yet people idolize me so. Moran had no words. Strong people acting humble was the most grating thing in the world. Chu Wanning had matter-of-factly said, I have 3 holy weapons, but this exalted Gochen was even more irritating. He actually went around calling the weapons he created paltry swords and little whips. Why didn't he just go ahead and call Emperor Fuxi little old man while he was at it? Moran took a while to process this and finally said, Then shouldn't you be in the heavenly realm? How could you be in this lake? I like to fight and spar, so I often ended up disturbing the Heavenly Emperor's peace and quiet. After being on the receiving end of his stink eye, I figured I might as well just descend. Then how long have you been here? Moran asked, dumbfounded. Gochen the Exalted thought it over before smiling. Not too long, only a few hundred years. A few hundred years, Moran repeated, then laughed dryly. Doesn't the Exalted God think that's a bit long? Gochen the Exalted's look was placid as he smiled. He nonchalantly waved his sleeves. It's not that long. Besides, forging a sword for the Heavenly Emperor used up much of my spiritual power. Furthermore, staying in a realm as abundantly opulent as heaven gets rather boring. It's much better down here. I dig this guy. Although Moran was extremely curious to learn more about this legendary god of weaponry, it wasn't really his place to keep prodding about personal affairs. He thought about it and decided there were more important matters at hand, so instead he said, Exalted Elder, you didn't just come out to see me today just because you thought my soul was special, right? Why not? Your spiritual power is rare, the sort one hardly ever comes across. Gochen the Exalted smiled. I worry that if I give you this blade, it would be wasted potential. It's not too bad, Moran replied. This blade seems like it would suit me. I thought so too at first, Gochen the Exalted continued, still smiling. But upon closer examination, I found that this isn't the case. You have a rare talent, so you piqued my interest. I came here today because I wanted to invite you to the bottom of the lake to chat. I would like to see which among those millions of blades would best suit you. Moran was speechless. Oh my god, is Moran about to get a scrap of validation? And this is one of, like, the big things that changes his trajectory? Is he really about to get appreciated for 2 seconds? By someone who... This was no small matter in and of itself. Even though Taishenjun had experienced a whole array of things in his life, this made him choke. The god of 1,000 weapons was actually inviting him to pick one of those weapons? Gochen the Exalted took Moran's silence to mean he was reluctant to go due to fear. There's no need to worry. Even though many monsters await under the water, they all answer to me. I guarantee they will not harm you. Wang Yue will testify to this. The old dragon said nothing, but slowly bowed at his side. When Moran realized that he really was being given a genuine invitation, his heart couldn't help but jolt. Then, if I go, would the Exalted God grant me a request? What manner of request? The person who sought a weapon before me is a close friend of mine. Oh, stop. As Moran spoke, he gestured to the shores beyond the barrier, pointing out Shimei. He was denied just now, so I'm thinking, if I grant the Exalted God's wish, then would the Exalted God grant me a wish in return and give him a weapon? Is that all? Something like that is nothing to me. Gochen the Exalted laughed. He flicked his hand and the ancient barrier covering the sky swiftly disappeared. This is a very simple matter. Let all 3 of them come, then. If any weapon catches their eyes, it is as good as theirs. Moran was delighted by this unexpected turn of events. He'd never thought that he would so effortlessly come across a way to solve the issue with which he had been wrestling. He was more excited at the possibility of Shimei receiving a holy weapon than by the prospect of his own upgrade. He quickly agreed to the exalted Gochen's invitation and brought the others over. As he relayed what was going on, Shimei and Shui Meng's eyes grew larger and larger, and even Chu Wanning reacted slightly. Gochen the Exalted watched from the side, but as if he'd realized something, he let out a and stared at Chu Wanning. You? I'm sorry, what? But as if he'd realized something, he let out a huh? And stared at Chu Wanning. You? That was the end of the chapter. Hang on. The biggest new thing to his life, the biggest new change to Moran's life trajectory is going to be getting to choose his sword, first of all, but then also getting his sword to Shimei, which, by the way, was sweet as hell. That was so sweet, and I'm really happy that Shimei is getting a damn sword, okay? It's happening one way or another. Not the way I envisioned it. I don't care. My baby's getting a sword. That's fantastic. But this is gonna... And if Chu Wanning gets another sword... I feel like this could monumentally shift things. And I mean, of course he would want to get Shimei a sword if Shimei winds up, like, dying without being able to protect himself. Of course he would want to get the bitch a sword. Like, this makes all the sense in the world. But that was, like, the first thing he thought of. And now the guy, like, recognizes Chu Wanning. Okay, you know what? We took a very brief break, a little bit early in this stream, because I forgot to feed my cat at the top of the stream. So now we're running a little bit late for the formal break. So we're just going to have another short little break now so that I can go, because I heard the wife get home. I'm going to go check in with her real quick, and then I'll be back for page 399, chapter 38, called This Venerable One, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Holy shit. I'll be back as soon as I possibly can so that we can do this. Okay? Oh my god. I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Oh, Jesus Christ. I don't even know how to click off on the on. There we go. I'll be right back. We are back, and we are picking up at chapter 38. Well, some shit's going down. My wife and my mother-in-law are literally in the next room across. We're sharing a wall right now. They're in the wife's room, and they're just chatting, and they got no idea what's going on and what the squawking is going to be about. Chu Wanning's indifference extended even to gods and immortals. "Does the exalted god recognize me?" he asked mildly. "How could I not?" Gochen smiled in his refined manner. "Many years ago, when you came to Jincheng Lake in search of a weapon, the depth and purity of your spiritual strength was such that I almost couldn't resist coming out to see you. So how is it? Is the weapon to your liking?" "Which weapon is the exalted god referring to?" Okay, you don't have to be hot about it. Like, which holy weapon? I have so many. You've got to be specific. Guchen startled slightly, then said with a smile, "How absent-minded of me to forget that I gave you 2. "No matter," said Chu Wanning. "Tianwen works very well." "Tianwen?" "The willow vine." "Oh, I see." Guchen smiled. "So you named it Tianwen. And what about the other one? What's that one called?" "Oh, Juga. It looks like Juga," answered Chu Wanning. "And how is Juga?" "It has a chilling temperament. I rarely use it." "What a shame." Gochen sighed. Done chatting, he turned around. "Wang Yue, I'll be taking them down below. It's not good for you to be up here above the water where the spiritual energy is so thin. You should head back soon, too." The old dragon nodded, raising a large wave as it dove back into the lake, scales glittering. Meanwhile, Chu Wanning busied himself with casting water-repelling charms on his 3 students. Gochen the Exalted watched him with interest, thinking, such a level of proficiency is rare amongst cultivators. I wonder who his teacher is. But Chu Wanning had an aloof air that didn't welcome small talk, and Gochen the Exalted knew better than to pry. Off the top of my head, I can't remember if we've heard anything about who taught Chu Wanning, who the Shizun was. I can't remember. I don't think so. But if we're supposed to have a name of who taught Chu Wanning or something like that, drop that in the chat. But if we're not supposed to know yet and that's supposed to be a mystery, then leave it a mystery. Once all the preparation... No, not yet. Thank you. Once all the preparations had been made, the group waded into the freezing waters of Jincheng Lake together. Owing to the charm, they moved unhindered in water as if on land. As they approached the depths, a boundless underwater world slowly came into view. The bottom of the lake was covered in fine white sand. Aquatic plants drifted gently in the flow, and row upon row of finely detailed buildings lined the crisscrossing paths. All manner of monsters and beasts came and went on the streets and in the alleys. In this place, even creatures that couldn't normally coexist lived in harmony. Jincheng Lake has plentiful spiritual energy and can thus be said to be a kind of paradise, said Gochen. The creatures who make their homes here stay for generations without ever leaving. So many of their customs are quite a bit different from what you might expect to encounter in the mortal realm. You're welcomed to look around if you wish. As he spoke, a snow-white rabbit spirit with scarlet eyes rode past on a tiger. The rabbit was dressed in white robes, all pomp and poise, with an arrogant look as it ceaselessly berated the tiger to go faster. The tiger, on the other hand, was meek and obedient without so much as a hint of dignity. We have art about this, by the way. Oh, and it's beautiful. Oh, they even got the rabbit in there. Hang on. They even got the rabbit on the tiger in there. Look at them. Also, wait, is that a mer person? It is. It is. Okay. The group watched, speechless. There's a lot of speechlessness in the reading today. Gochen the Exalted led them along the main path. Countless shops crowded both sides of the street, and all kinds of creatures passed them by. Soon enough, they arrived at the center of the city. Even more demons were gathered there, making for quite a strange sight. Jincheng Lake rarely has contact with the outside world, but you can barter for nearly anything you need here. Legend has it that Jincheng Lake was formed from your blood, said Shui Meng. Wouldn't that make you the master of this place, then? Since it's your spiritual energy that sustains everything here. I wouldn't go that far. Gochen smiled a little. Besides, that's all in the past. I left the realm of the gods long ago, and my spiritual strength is nothing like what it used to be. Thinking back on those heaven and earth shattering events now, they seem almost like they happened in a dream. How are any of them related to my current self? These days, I'm a mere swordsmith. The parallels with our protagonist exist. He showed them around the city center as he spoke. The creatures at the bottom of the lake, having lived with Gochen the Exalted all this time, seemed to have forgotten his status as a founding god. They didn't react much even when he walked by them, busy as they were with minding their own business and peddling their wares. Fish blood manteau, freshly made. Skin of skin of Shuiran. Shuiran snake, premium clothing material, only 3 feet left. Once it's all gone, you'll have to wait for my next shedding. Hilarious. Selling squid ink, brow filler, made with fresh ink, spat just this morning by yours truly. It'll do wonders for your eyebrows. Hey, wait, miss, don't leave. The market was inundated with the sounds of various creatures hawking their wares, and the unusual sights were no less worthy of marvel. A headless ghost sat by its stall selling combs and makeup. It held a comb between 2 fingers with long scarlet-painted nails as it brushed the hair on its own still bleeding head, which rested on its knees. High-quality bone combs, it called in a soft voice. Take one home with you today. Shui Meng's eyes were wide as he glanced left and right. He saw an apothecary to the side staffed by merfolk that sold all kinds of medicinal herbs that he'd never even seen before. He was just about to go over and see if he could bring some home for his mother when an ear-piercingly shrill voice rang out from behind him. Make way, let me through. Shui Meng's foot froze mid-step, but when he turned to look, there was no one there. Gochen smiled. Look carefully, under your foot. Sure enough, Shui Meng squinted and spied a pile of tiny rocks moving on its own. Well, that's new, he mumbled. Even rocks can walk here. Is it a rock spirit or something? Fuban, Chu Wanning connected. Full bar? Chu Wanning shot him a mild look. It's one thing for Moran to not pay attention in class, but you too. Shui Meng was the sort to dive headlong into the practice of martial arts with his whole being, while paying absolutely no heed whatsoever to things like literature and history. That sounds too much like me. Give me, English, writing, and art and theater. But do not give me math and science. And, to a very large extent, history. Don't do it. In fear of his Shizun's imposing aura, he sat straight and proper during Chu Wanning's lectures, but everything went in one ear and out the other. His entire face burned at having been caught in the act by that same Shizun. Moran put his hands together, laughing. Shizun isn't being fair to me. I totally listened to that lecture. Shui Meng wasn't about to back down. Oh yeah? Go on and explain it then. A fuban is a type of bug that's exceptionally greedy by nature. It tries to gather up any and all pretty rocks it sees, and it usually ends up crushed to death under that pile. Moran looked expectantly at Chu Wanning with a grin on his face. Shizun, am I right? Chu Wanning nodded. The fuban has gone extinct in the outside world. I didn't expect to see one here. This one just lucked out, Gochen explained with a smile. It's only still alive thanks to the local apothecary. Watch, here he comes. They observed the fuban trudge They observed the Fuban trudge to the steps of the apothecary with great effort, where it yelled, "I can't take it anymore. Hurry and save me, doctor." A turquoise sea dragon swiftly swam forward. He was clearly used to handling this situation, and he smiled leisurely as he took out a white porcelain bottle. He poured a golden red medicinal potion on the Fuban like this was the most normal occurrence. "Hello, foolish old man. Good harvest today." The so-called foolish old man huffed, tone lazy while it enjoyed the medicinal bath. Not too bad, not too bad. 100 more tomorrow, and I'll have 400,085,617 rocks at home. Both Mo-ran and Chu Wanning were at a loss for words. "That's quite a hoard," mumbled Shimei. The dragon finished pouring the medicine. "Remember to come earlier tomorrow. Any later, and even this strengthening dew won't save you." Yeah, got it. I'll come earlier," the Fuban replied half-heartedly. Then a pale yellow rock in the corner caught its eye, and it started hollering again. "Hey, little eel!" I meant Dr. Dragon. Dr. Dragon. Dr. Dragon. Dr. Dragon. Dragon PhD. Dr. Dragon. Dragon went to med school. Dr. Dragon. The apothecary. "Might I please trouble you to put that pretty rock over there on my back? That way I'll have 400,085,618 rocks tomorrow." Shuimeng couldn't resist walking over. "What do you need so many rocks for?" he asked. "Are you building a house?" "What the?" The Fuban's shrill, conceited voice came from under the pile of rocks. "A human? I haven't had to look at one of you for ages. How is it any of your business why I'm gathering rocks? Of course it's not for building a house. I'm not that bored." Shimei was also curious. "What for, then, if not that?" "To count, of course," the Fuban said self-righteously. The group was rendered totally speechless. They're never going to speak again at this rate. In any case, after strolling around for a while, Go-Chen took them back to his residence. In a corner of the streets, they came upon an enormous seashell that stood like a folding screen against the outside world. Behind it lay a large courtyard divided into 6 magnificent and expansive sections. Halls and corridors led to side wings and flower gardens, and bead curtains made of pearls and kelp swayed peacefully in the water. Some of the side rooms were dark, while others were lit by candlelight and faint, barely audible notes of Congo strings. I believe that's it. And Shun drifted from within. Just like in the apothecary, all the servants of the god's residence were merfolk. Some kept their dragon tails, while others had transformed their tails into legs, preferring to walk instead. However, they didn't seem to like shoes much, as all of them were barefoot. Upon seeing the confusion on their faces, Go-Chen smiled. "I live with my good friend Wang Yue, who was once the crown prince of the eastern seas," he explained airily. "These are the servants he brought with him when he took up residence here." Wang Yue was the name of that old dragon. Mo-ran was rather fond of that black dragon, since he had acquired his holy weapon from it in his previous lifetime. "Where is he, anyway?" he couldn't help but ask, smiling. "He probably assumes a different form down here, right? He's so ginormous, I doubt he'd be able to fit in this place otherwise." Go-Chen nodded. "That's a matter of course," he said cheerily, "but he gets tired easily in his old age. He's probably retired early after having gone above water. If you want to see him again, you'll have to wait for him to wake up." Just then a merman with long brown hair floated over and bowed deeply to Go-Chen. "Exalted God, welcome home," he said in a soft, graceful voice. "Wang Yue Dansha told this humble servant everything. Would it please the exalted God to take his guests to the arsenal of holy weapons forthwith?" Go-Chen didn't answer at first. Instead, he looked politely to his guests first and only nodded when he confirmed that they were amenable. "Yes, very well. Please have the kitchen prepare food and wine. We shall dine when we return from the arsenal." They passed through the courtyards to the deepest section of the seashell. In the center of this courtyard stood a massive weeping willow that towered toward the skies. The willow must have been a different species from those in the world above the lake, as its trunk was so thick it would have taken 10 adult men standing hand to wrap around it. Its bark was ancient and twisting, and thousands of willow vines hung from it like an emerald curtain. "Whoa, how old is this tree?" Shuimeng asked hoarsely. I haven't kept count, but at least 100,000 years, Go Chen replied. I'm assuming this willow vine tree is home to another certain willow vine? What kind of tree lives that long? Shuimeng asked, startled. Trees naturally live longer than humans, and this one in particular has been nourished by the spiritual energy of Jincheng Lake, so it's not really that unexpected. Anyway, please follow closely. The entrance to the arsenal is in the hollow of this tree. Gochen paused and looked at Shuimeng. Please don't touch the branches. This tree has cultivated into a spirit and can feel pain. But his words came a little too late. Shuimeng had already plucked a leaf. Ha! Shuimeng yelped. At the same time, a faint groan reverberated through the empty air, as if a raspy voice was sighing softly. Ow. Shuimeng paled as if struck by lightning and hurriedly flung the leaf away. What? Why is there blood? Sure enough, a stream of blood trickled from the branch where the leaf had been broken off. The leaf that had been grown aside, that had been thrown aside, writhed and convulsed on the ground like a living thing, before gradually growing still, curling up, and rapidly withering away. As I said, it's a spirit, Gochen said helplessly. Why would the young Gongzhe... He shook his head and walked up to examine the broken branch, where he used his spiritual energy to soothe the willow and stop its bleeding. Shuimeng, come here, said Chu Wanning. Don't touch anything else. Yes, Shizun. Knowing he'd messed up, Shuimeng walked over obediently with his head hung low. Fortunately, this incident wasn't too major. Chu Wanning apologized to Gochen the Exalted, who, with all the magnanimity expected of a founding god, only smiled. The young Gongzhe is truly agile and swift. Shuimeng didn't say a word, his face bright red as he followed behind Chu Wanning with his head hanging low. They passed through the curtain of lush branches and arrived at the trunk itself. Up close, the willow was even more overwhelmingly colossal than it had seemed from a distance. That initial approximation of 10 men was possibly a vast underestimation of its size. There was a hollow in the trunk of the willow. Rather, it would have been more accurate to call it a huge arched gateway, wide enough for 3 brawny men to pass through at the same time. The hollow was blocked by numerous complicated barriers, which Gochen dispelled one by one before turning to say with a smile, The holy weapon arsenal is right inside. It's kind of small and a little messy. Sorry for the inconvenience. Moran was quite curious and immediately moved to follow behind Gochen, but Chu Wanning held him back as if by reflex. Don't rush, he said mildly. But he went in himself. Moran had long since grown used to Chu Wanning doing this sort of thing. In his previous lifetime, whenever the 4 of them had gone on missions to subdue demons, Chu Wanning had always walked at the vanguard. Back then, Moran had thought that his Shizun was impatient and arrogant and that he didn't want to be outdone by those younger than him. But having been reborn, the Moran of the present saw things somewhat differently. As he watched Chu Wanning's white robes disappear into the darkness of the tree's hollow, a thread of hesitation surfaced in his heart. Was this person really rushing to be in the front because he was impatient and arrogant? That's the end of the chapter. Also, no! He's protecting his students! But, I'll take any bit of growth and realization from Moran that I can get. That was the end of the chapter? Did I say that? I don't know. We're underwater. Who can say? We're on page 409 for chapter 39, which is called This Venerable One's New Weapon. I'm going to double check to make sure that the chapter length is kind of on par for what we've seen so far, because if that's the case, we should be able to squeeze this one in by the end. And then I have to do page math. 1 second. Also, is it just me, or have I been speaking faster lately? And with generally saying more coherent thoughts and observations? Because I tell you what, as an ADHD person who is unmedicated, I got a tip from another ADHD person that B12, taking B12 can help. Obviously not to the same degree as medication, but help. Just generally just kind of help a bit. And I tell you what, I've been on B12 for a week or 2 at this point, and I have noticed a difference, particularly in my frickin' motor mouth. Am I hallucinating? Yeah. Page math, that's what I was doing. 1 second. We are now on 409, and we started way back here. Hang on. Meet God. Probably lost his mind. Right, this venerable one slips. Okay, 364 to 408. Oh, good. We're right on. Cool. We are right bang on in terms of page count. All right. This venerable one's new weapon. I said I was going to check the chapter, and then I didn't. Okay, hang on. 409 to... Yeah, it is. It's just about 10 pages. So we'll be able to sneak this one in, because I really didn't want to have to wait till Tuesday to find out what this is about to be. Within the tree's hollow lay a narrow passage. They made their way along a flight of smooth stone steps, the slippery sensation underfoot seeming almost to travel from the soles of their feet to the depths of their hearts. At the end of the passage, a bright light awaited. The exalted Gochen's kind of small and a little messy arsenal of holy weapons turned out to be of a totally different size than they had expected when they looked at it from the outside. Is it bigger on the inside? The ancient tree was enormous, but its interior was even more expansive. It's bigger on the inside. I'm very happy right now. The wife and I just started a Doctor Who rewatch. It seemed to encompass the heavens above and swallow the earth below. I knew he was underestimating oh, it's so small. Oh my God, it's so messy. Here, holy weapons. Like that did not track for me. When they oh, nope, sorry, that was getting ahead of myself. It seemed to encompass the heavens above and swallow the earth below. Towering shelves lined the arsenal and were packed with tens of thousands of weapons proudly on display. When they looked up, they couldn't even see the ceiling, only row upon row of racks filled with magnificent weapons. It made for a vision of boundless grandeur and untold splendor. And in the center of the arsenal sat a crucible. Waves of blistering heat came off of the red-hot metal within it, and several unfinished weapons resting inside. Each and every weapon made by Gochen the Exalted far surpassed the likes of the legendary weapons Zidian and Qingxuang. Where a normal weapon would have been marred by the intense, searing heat, the blades and tips of these weapons only glistened all the more, radiant and resplendent. Even more wondrous were the various weapon parts soaring through the air on their own, moved by the ancient tree's spell arrays. These tiny decorative pieces and ornamental jewels danced overhead like so many little fairies, occasionally colliding to send sparks flying and fill the air with delightful tinkles. Gochen looked back with a smile. It's a little cramped in here, huh? Thought Shimei. Cramped? Then what do you think is spacious? Thought Shui Meng. Am I allowed to say motherfucker? Thought Moran. Chu Wanning remained impassive. Gochen the Exalted told Shui Meng and Shimei to look around and pick weapons, and that they were welcome to take whichever one struck their fancy. Meanwhile, Gochen the Exalted was especially interested in Moran, and so he had him try weapon after weapon. However, he found all of them wanting. Fengming Jiaowei. Not the least bit discouraged, Gochen handed over yet another weapon, the 14th so far. Try this one. I don't know how to play, said Moran. No matter, just give it a strum. This guqin was smooth and glossy on the front and scorched black on the back. Moran plucked at it a couple of times as instructed, but the strings unexpectedly began to vibrate, resonating with a shrill tone. Gochen instantly tossed Fengming aside, where a spell carried the guqin back to its stand, and exchanged it for a jade pipa. Let's skip this one, said Moran. The pipa was an instrument much too feminine for a man like him. Something like that was better suited to those pretty boys at Kunlun Tashway Palace. But Gochen insisted. Try it. Fine. Moran had no choice but to give in and take the proffered pipa. His grievance ran a little too strong, and after only a couple of plucks, the string snapped under his hand. Gochen stared at that broken string and, after a long moment, said, Do you know what that string is made of? You're not going to make me pay for it, are you? Moran asked. The Wushan goddess's white hair, Gochen muttered. It is of the spiritual essence of earth, impervious to sword and fire alike. But you... Moran glanced backward in alarm. Shizun, I don't have the money to pay for it. Chu Wanning remained silent. Gochen the Exalted twirled the string between his fingers, mumbling to himself, "The earth element is naturally weak to the wood element. For you to be able to destroy part of a spiritual essence of earth, could it be that a weapon suitable for you must be of the wood element?" What? But it couldn't be. For some reason, Gochen shot a glance at Chu Wanning. Chu Wanning noticed his glance. What couldn't be? Instead of answering, Gochen the Exalted lifted his hand and waved, summoning a ceramic shun. He blew into it, and as the sound slowly faded, the space above them was split open by a blood-red summoning array. Ji Baihua, come here. Moran's head snapped upward. Shui Meng and Shimei heard the commotion and also came over. They watched as air swirled about Gochen's fingertips with his power, rotating the intricate array above. From it emerged a fox spirit with fluffy, luxurious tails, accompanied by splendid lights and a shower of glittering silver. The fox spirit circled the air and floated leisurely down to land in front of Moran. The fox spirit was quite pretty. Up close he turned out to be a male fox spirit with a dot of red between his eyebrows and a pair of peach blossom eyes that were slightly lifted and delicately expressive. He was draped in ornate, finely embroidered garments and held a box of golden brocade in his hands. Glancing at Gochen, he smiled. "Exalted God." "You must know what I called you for, yes?" said Gochen. "This humble one knows." "And what do you think?" Ji Baihua smiled. "Not bad. It's worth a try." The two went back and forth with each other, paying no mind at all to the other four individuals present. Moran couldn't resist asking, "What exactly are you talking about?" Is the young Shenjun already getting impatient?" Ji Baihua asked with a smile. "Actually, it's really quite interesting. I felt your spiritual energy before I appeared and thought for sure that you would be a white-haired old man. I'm surprised you're actually a handsome young thing." Moran had no words. I mean, it's not like he died an old man, but like... "Ji Baihua," Gochen the Exalted said. "The matter at hand?" All right, I was just having a bit of fun." Ji Baihua's eyes narrowed, his fluffy tail swishing. "What was the matter at hand again?" "Hiya, don't glare at me, Xiaogo. As for this thing, it's really such a long story." "Then could you please make the long story short?" Moran asked with a smile. Yep, if you want the short version instead, it's actually super short." Ji Baihua responded, also with a smile. Using spiritual energy, he floated the brocade box in his hands over to Moran. "Here, take it." That was indeed super short. I'd kind of like the explanation, though. Is there like an answer in between? We don't need to sit here for 10 years, but something? I don't know. Just here, have this godly weapon with no explanation kind of makes me nervous. Moran took the brocade box to weigh in his hands and turned it over to examine. The box was a scintillating gold and shrouded in a luminous gleam, but it provided no hints as to what manner of holy weapon lay inside. Moreover, the box had neither seam nor crack. Its only decoration was a pair of koi fish on the top, one black and one white, each holding the tail of the other in its mouth, to form the yin-yang symbol. "How does it open?" "The opening method will have to remain between the two of us," said Ji Baihua. "No one else can know." "Are you trying to say that we should excuse ourselves?" Shui Meng asked. "That won't be necessary. I'll just borrow this young man for a minute," Ji Baihua replied with a smile, and he waved a hand. Moran's sight suddenly darkened, and he found himself alone with Ji Baihua in a small, secret chamber. "No need to be nervous, young Shenjun. I just teleported us. The box holding that weapon is a magic artifact of my secret and exclusive design. That's why I couldn't tell you how to open it in front of everyone else. I hope you understand." Moran smiled. "It's fine, but just what is this weapon to warrant being held in such a box?" "That I cannot tell you," Ji Baihua said. "Holy weapons have their own temperaments. This one in particular doesn't like to let its form be known so easily. If you offend it, it will refuse to recognize you as its master, even if you do manage to open the box. This one in particular doesn't like to let its form be known so easily. If you offend it, it will refuse to recognize you as its master, even if you do manage to open the box." Sounds familiar! Moran was speechless for a moment and could only force a smile. What kind of weapon even... Such a strange temper. Fine. Tell me then, how do I open the box? Upon realizing that he wasn't going to force the issue, Ju Baihua found he quite approved of Moran. He put his hands together with a laugh. Since you're so straightforward, I won't beat around the bush either. This box is called Ever Yearning. Okay, alright, strap in for the bullshit. This box is called Ever Yearning. As you see, it's completely seamless. In order for it to open, 2 conditions must be met. And the conditions are? Asked Moran. Fox spirits like us believe in fated love, answered Ju Baihua. And so first, there is only one person in this world who can open Ever Yearning for you. This person will be extremely important in your life. You must love them dearly, and they must love you in return, as well as be wholly devoted to you. Moran smiled. I see. It's a strange condition for sure, but that doesn't seem too difficult. He was confident in his feelings for Shimei. But at his words, the corners of Ju Baihua's lips curved faintly upward. But how could it not be difficult? The heart of another has been a mystery to man since time immemorial. What you think to be true might not necessarily be so. I've lingered in this world for a long time and have seen far too many people who lost sight of their hearts, or who knew not their own most beloved. In all these thousands of years, pitifully few have ever managed to open Ever Yearning. Why is that? Moran asked, surprised. Even if you get the wrong person, can't you just try another? Even if you have to try every person you know, you definitely find this so-called most important person in your life eventually, right? That's where the second condition comes in, said Ju Baihua. Aside from you, only one other person can touch Ever Yearning. In other words, you only have one chance. If you choose the wrong person, then it will remain closed to you forever, and no one will ever be able to acquire the item within. 2 frickin' possibilities. Technically 3. Either he immediately holds it out to Shimei, and Shimei touches it, and we never find out what's in the box. Or, Chu Wanning will somehow, accidentally, touch it. Because they don't know how to open it, right? So Chu Wanning is going to accidentally touch this, somehow. And homosexuality will ensue. Or, this happens way later, and we've just been given something that doesn't pay off for a while. And Moran will deliberately hand it to Chu Wanning to open. And Chu Wanning will open it. My money is on the second one. That's my best guess, given what I have read of this series so far. Moran laughed. No wonder you separated us from everyone else. It'd certainly be hard to handle if the others heard this too. How awkward would it be if they knew that whomever I offer the box to is the one I like? He paused, playing with the brocade box in his hands. Anyway, this thing sure is interesting. So it's basically a lock with a one-use keyhole, and the wrong key will disable it for good. Of course you only get one chance to open it. What did you expect? Now Ju Baihua glared at him. You mortals only have a mere few decades of life, yet you're so preoccupied with self-indulgence. Just how much fated love have you squandered away without realizing it? Love is not unlike this Ever Yearning, after all. You cannot so simply take back a wrong choice. Worry not, oh great immortal fox. Others might have chosen wrong, but I've got this in the bag. Maybe it is the first option. Moran bowed to him and smiled. I won't squander this yearning. Even though my entire previous life could be characterized by squandering this yearning. Ooh. Ju Baihua shot him a look. Don't be so sure about that, young man, he said, voice soft and graceful. From what I can tell, you don't actually seem to know your fated person at all. Get wrecked. Woo! Moran paused, smile frozen on his face. What do you mean by that? But the handsome immortal, this self-proclaimed believer in fated love, was unwilling to say any more. He only sighed softly. To yearn unwittingly breaks the willow branch. That comes with a footnote. A willow branch symbolizes the ache of parting and is given as a parting gift. From Libai's, and I believe the name of either the story or the poem is in Chinese characters. Willow branch. Moran wasn't a learned man, and he didn't understand this pedantic, scholarly bullshit, but he also couldn't shake the feeling that the fox spirit was subtly trying to remind him of something. Not subtly. It's not subtle at all. There is no subtlety in this secret place right now. It is all extremely obvious and very overt. What do you mean, subtle? He's trying to tell me something. What could it possibly be? Unfortunately, however he tried, he was too dumb to understand just what that something might be. I admire the commitment to his sheer and utter dumbness. He was just about to ask again when Ji Baihua, knowing that his task was complete, smiled slightly and waved a hand to send Moran back into the world. The second Moran was gone, Ji Baihua froze and became stiff. Soon after, he shattered into pieces with a crash. All that remained was a single black chess piece that fell where he'd once stood. It was really too bad that Moran never saw this. Many things at the bottom of this lake might have turned out differently, had he only done so. What? What do you mean? What? I feel like a Jennifer Lawrence gif right now. What do you mean? What do you explain? What do you mean? What do you mean? What's happening? What is that? What is that? What is that? What is that supposed to mean? When Moran came to, he realized he was back at the arsenal of holy weapons where the other four were waiting for him, ever yearning in his hands. Gochen the Exalted smiled broadly at his return. That little fox is really too much. All this secretive ado just to open a box. Well then, do you know how to open it now? The moment of truth was already upon him, so either way, Moran didn't have time to ponder it too deeply. He smiled. Yeah, it's easy. He walked up to Shimei, very casually. The lock has such an interesting and clever design. You guys probably couldn't figure it out given a whole decade. Wanna try? As he said so, he offered the box to Shimei. Once again, very casually. The brocade box glittered brilliantly in front of Shimei, its golden glow lighting up his gentle, elegant face. Shimei, why don't you try it first? Moran tried to act nonchalant, but his heart had tied itself into a knot, and his palms wouldn't stop sweating. This was a gamble on his part, one that risked his chance at acquiring a holy weapon. By all rights, he really ought to have been careful about something like this, but in fact he felt like he was being plenty careful. After all, he had already died once. How could he still not know just who it was he cared for? Or who cared for him. That's something we haven't talked about lately. Shimei's utter, like, ha ha ha, about all of this, kind of like masking the potential reality that, he just simply doesn't. Like, he cares about Moran, but he doesn't care about Moran, you know what I mean? How could he still not know just who it was he cared for? It's not like he was dumb. It's not like he was dumb. It's not like he was dumb. It's not like he's 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 dumb. Please. It's not like he's dumb. It wasn't like he was dumb. It wasn't like he was dumb. Why? It wasn't like he was dumb. Please. Shimei hesitated a bit, but after that, he took the proffered box. Moran's heart leapt into his throat. He stared intently, but a long while passed and nothing happened. Moran continued to stare dumbly. It's the first one! And we're gonna need whatever the fuck is in that box later. Shit. Shimei carefully cradled the box as he examined it, tracing the yin-yang koi fish with his fingers. There's no seam at all, he said, wondering aloud. I can't find a keyhole either. Why was there no reaction? It wasn't like he was dumb. Shimei was touching, ever yearning, so why wasn't anything happening? Could it be it had to be the gloves. With that realization, Moran glanced at the deer-hide gloves on Shimei's hands. He was just about to ask Shimei to take them off and try again when, without warning, a slender-fingered hand reached over and calmly took Ever Yearning. Moran cried out in anguish as if he had been struck by lightning. Shizun! Chu Wanning nearly jumped and almost dropped the box, but his composed exterior was ingrained all the way down to his bones, so his inner turbulence wasn't the least bit visible on his face. Moran howled like the freshly bereaved. Shizun! Goosebumps sprang up across Shui Meng's body. What are you wailing about? It's just a box. What's wrong with you? You're yelling like somebody stole your wife or something. It wasn't like he was dumb. Moran was genuinely about to pass out from anger, but he couldn't say the reason why. He could only cover his face and howl helplessly. Oh, God. Chu Wanning, why aren't you wearing gloves? Why, when you're so afraid of the cold? It's all ice and snow out there. We're all wearing gloves, so why are you the only one? Moran paused. Oh. Each of the disciples wore demon-repelling high-tongue flowers that had to be linked to Chu Wanning's spiritual energy via his palms. So, Chu Wanning hadn't even bought himself a pair of gloves to start with. The reason he wasn't wearing gloves was to protect them. But this whole time, Moran had never spared him so much as a single thought. It was only now, at this crucial moment, that he noticed that Chu Wanning, the one among them most afraid of the cold, had been freezing from the start. Moran wanted to cry, but no tears came. He lamented his bad luck for having let the holy weapon slip through his fingers just like that. His chest was unspeakably tight. Then, all of a sudden, as Chu Wanning's fingers brushed past the yin-yang fish, that pair of metal koi came to life and began to weave nimbly around the box. A beat of silence. And then, with two crisp clicks, the yin-yang koi came together and rose to protrude from the surface, becoming a pair of handles. Chu Wanning turned the handles, and Ever Yearning split into two to reveal a radiant object inside that emitted a golden glow. Moran was stunned. Jibaihua's words rang in his ears. There is only one person in this world who can open Ever Yearning for you. This person will be extremely important in your life. You must love them dearly, and they must love you in return, as well as be wholly devoted to you. This person was Chu Wanning. How could it possibly be Chu Wanning? It wasn't like he was dumb. No way. Absolutely no way in hell. How could he love Chu Wanning, and how could Chu Wanning even like him? What a joke. This had to be a mistake. Something was wrong with the box. The box was definitely broken. Moran was still hung up on this as Chu Wanning removed the holy weapon from inside Ever Yearning, at which point something even more startling occurred. This time, Mo-Run wasn't the only one who was shocked. The other three were as well. Even Chu Wanning's expression flickered. A glistening willow vine illuminated their faces, its transcendent light reflected in their eyes. In the midst of everybody else's stupefied silence, Mo-Run choked for quite a while before finally spitting out with much difficulty and even more disbelief. Tianwen. We're over time. We're on page 421 for chapter 40, which is called This Venerable One Cannot Believe This, What the Hell? And that's a mood. I am so thoroughly done for today. I'm done. That's it. I hope you have a lovely fucking weekend. And it's delightful, and you get to go outside and see some flowers and touch some grass. There's like a squirrel in my tree right here. I hope you get some nature and some peacefulness over your weekend. I will keep everybody up to date on what's happening with Pretty Boy over on the Patreon, and that will be available even to free members. So if you want to go sign up over there, you will be kept in the loop on that. I am so unbelievably done. So I'm going. I'm finished. That's it for today. I love you all very, very much. And I will see you next Tuesday at the same time to keep reading Husky and his white cat Chizoon. Have a wonderful rest of your day.